Welcome everyone to this lesson. Today we will talk about the Nuraghic civilization, which developed in Sardinia around 1500 years before Christ. Although the Nuraghic material culture saw the emergence of new artifacts, the bronzetti, bronze statuettes, which can be seen in many museums around the world, the main architectural feature of this civilization is, without any doubt, the tower. Today, we will focus our attention on these Nuraghic architectures, which spread throughout Sardinia around 1500 years before Christ. We will see how these buildings developed from the starting point of a corridor proto-Nuraghi to the final polylobed ones. Already 1700 years before Christ, new structures had begun to appear. They didn't present towers, however, the way the stones were positioned seems to have anticipated the method used by the Nuraghic people to build the towers over the course of the following centuries. Let's now begin our journey through the development of the Nuraghi. Today, we'll be exploring two different types of Nuraghi. The Proto-Nuraghi, on the left side of this image, or Bastion Nuraghi, which consists of a corridor, and the Nuraghi with Tholos, the right side of the image, developed around 1500 years before Christ, which present one or more towers. This latter type display towers having a truncated conical shape with inner Tholos chamber and a roof higher than the corridor of the Proto-Nuraghi, thus granting a larger internal space. On the left side of the screen, you can see an example of Proto-Nuraghi, a building 8 up to 10 meters long and 4 up to 5 meters tall. To better understand this evolution, we will now go back in time. We are around the end of the Copper Age in a pristine and not yet anthropized territory. Now, imagine a group of families which decide to settle in this land. The first thing that this group will do is to look for water, since without water there is no surviving. Once the water source is identified, there are other important characteristics that need to be addressed in the surroundings: passes, trails, and the overall habitat. They will then begin to build huts, set up trails, and establish strategical control points to survey the valley where they settled, the waterways, the arable lands, and the pastures for livestock. In these crucial control locations, huts were built which have been monumentalized and fortified over the course of the centuries, thus creating the Corridor Nuraghi. During the Copper Age, Sardinia was part of a migration phenomenon, which saw the arrival of people, especially from the Iberian Peninsula, searching for metals and new trade routes. These were the Baker people, who brought with them an innovative technique, the rectangular dolmen, which they used for constructing their burials. At their arrival in Sardinia, they found the Monteclaro people, who were already settled in this land. The Monteclaro people are the ones who built Monte Baranta, as we saw in the previous lesson. The Monteclaro people knew how to construct large walls, and the Baker people knew how to carve into the rocks to create the corridors. The merging of the two cultures paved the way for the development of the Nuraghic culture. In this image, you can see the transition from the rectangular dolmen on the left to the triangular ogive pointed arch, as in the Nuraghi Piscu in Suelli on the right side of the image. Nuraghi Piscu has seen different phases in its construction over the course of the late Bronze Age, and it expresses the maximum result of the Nuragic architecture with its very high ogive and enormous tallus reaching up to 7-8 meters of height. In Italy, the tallus is 11 meters high. This image shows Monte Baranta, which, as we saw in the previous lesson about the Copper Age in Sardinia, is a megalithic walled corridor with two entrances topped with an architrave, a dolmen. From these openings, two corridors stretch into the bastion and they keep the same dolmenic structure. On the left side of this image, we can see the section of a dolmen with its rectangular shape. At first, Nuragic people built the lateral walls, and then they looked for long enough slabs to position on them, so to create a dolmen-type covered corridor. These corridors are the foundation of the future corridor Nuraghi or Proto-Nuraghi. In this image we can see one of the oldest Nuraghi in Sardinia. It is the Nuraghi of Bruncu Madugui, built 1800 years before Christ and located on the Giara Gestury, on the Gestury tableland. It externally appears like a large wall, however, there is a corridor within it, which accesses a spiral stone stair leading to the upper floor. The second floor of this corridor Nuraghi is where the main function of the Nuraghi was performed, namely to overlook and control the valley and the rivers, so to have a precise indication of who was in the territory and what was happening in it. This is the reason why the Nuraghi proliferated in high places with an unobstructed view over the village and its surroundings. The site in this image is located in Serri. The corridor was originally covered so to form the basement of a Nuraghi, precisely of a corridor Nuraghi. From this picture we can acknowledge that the corridor Nuraghi were not made for people to live in, they were dark and spaceless. The first variation that the Nuragic people introduced was to increment the width of the corridor. Thus, the search for large enough slabs to be lent on the new wider lateral walls of the corridor began, and this search was carried out in the territory. The Nuraghi are built with local stones. In this image, in Tiesi, we can see the stairs leading to a terrace, which generally overlooks the surroundings of the Nuraghi. It is plausible to believe that wooden structures were present on these terraces, and I think that the function of the Nuraghi escapes complete comprehension because we are not aware of how this structure actually looked like. As we've been discussing so far, we can count different sequential phases in the evolutionary process of the Nuraghi structure. The first phase is that of the simple corridor with only one entrance. The second one is the phase where there is one entrance and one exit too, so one was able to walk through the corridor. In the third phase, little rooms began to appear within these spaces, but there are still no chambers on the ground level, and the chambers were only on the second story. The fourth phase of the evolution of the corridor Nuraghi sees the development of chambers on the ground floor too. However, they are still elliptic, not yet perfectly circular. The Nuraghi of this phase are called combined Nuraghi, since they present both a corridor and a talus tower. These Nuraghi have a gabled cover with overhanging stones, creating a closed cover, similar to an inverted boat. In this image, we can see the Nuraghi Izzana, built around 1500 years before Christ. It is still a corridor Nuraghi, but we can already see a little evolution. In this other picture of the Nuraghi Izzana in Agios, we can appreciate the typical rectangular entrance, but the corridor begins to show a narrower top in comparison to the base. This new structure freed the Nuragic people from the architectural restriction of the length of the slabs when building the roof. So, we had a first transition from the dolmen, with a rectangular section, to the truncated ogive section, where the ogive is interrupted close to its top by an architrave, as you can see in the image on the right side of the screen. In this way, they obtain a trapezoidal section. Sometimes a little opening is present above the architrave, and this makes it possible to reduce the darkness in the nuragic inside. This phase, characterized by the truncated ogive with a little opening above the architrave, began in the 15th century before Christ. Around 1350 years before Christ, the extraordinary phase of the Nuraghi with circular tholos-shaped chambers began. These towered Nuraghi present different staircases from the previous ones. In fact, unlike the steep and not easily accessible stairs in the corridor Nuraghi, in the tholos Nuraghi the stairs have a helicoidal or spiral development. The first step in the construction of this Nuraghi was the creation of the internal circular space of the central tower, accessible by the entrance on the ground floor. The walls then developed vertically and narrowing closer to the top, thus creating the tholos. The following step was to build another circular wall around the first one to incorporate it like a shell. This produced a structure with a tower within the other. The staircase was then built in the space between the internal and external walls. The stairs developed both vertically and spirally, and they lead to the terrace and to the upper floor chamber. 1300 years before Christ, Nuragic people were the first and only one to be able to superimpose chambers in the same tower. Towers were present all around the world, but only in Sardinia there are these superimposed ones. Some Nuraghi accommodate within themselves up to 3 chambers on top of each other, reaching almost 30 meters of height. 27 meters tall, it had 3 superimposing chambers and possibly a wooden terrace of which we don't have any traces. In these 2 images of Santa Cristina and Orolo, we are now focusing on the 14th century before Christ. These Nuraghi already present truncated ogive entrances with architrave and a little opening above it. In this image, we can see the Nuraghi Ardassai in Seui, and we begin to see a Nuraghi built with isodomic blocks. That means composed of stones of uniform size. The structural innovation frees the entrance from the architrave. This testifies a fairly recent phase in the evolution of the Nuraghi structure. In fact, we are now observing the last phase, where the ogive is complete, without the architrave. We can now see the internal structure of the Nuraghi Ardassai and its concentric rows of stones that develop vertically towards the tower's top, which, according to some scholars, presented a cover that could have been removed if needed. This could be the reason why the Nuragic people moved from the squat corridor Nuraghi to the vertical ones, the multiple stories tholos Nuraghi. Furthermore, the presence of Sardinian people in Egypt and the influence of this culture are significant. The worshipping of god Ammon, the god of the sun, could be an explanation for the vertical development of the Nuraghi, looking as if they were reaching for the sky, seeking a connection with it. Should this be the case, we could deduce that also Sardinian people were devoted to a heavenly deity. The addition of towers to the basic structure, as the one you can see in this image, has been an important shift in the evolution of the Nuraghi structure. This evolution took place over the course of 7 centuries and consisted of a sequence of additions and refurbishments, following precise geometrical guidelines. On the left side of the screen, we can see a central tower, enclosed by a curtain wall linking 3 external towers. Another important feature in this new phase of the Nuraghi was a courtyard within the structure, where sometimes a well was present. On the right side of the image, you can see a Nuraghi which is most likely older than the one on the left. It consists of a circular base tower to which another was attached by lateral curtain walls. The space created by this addition and expansion constituted a courtyard, which receives the sunlight and illuminates the two chambers in the tower. We can appreciate the importance of this courtyard, considering that in general the Nuraghi are quite dark places with not much light. During the course of the 13th century before Christ, the full ogive was achieved, as we can see in this image, in Luras. In this side, the inner courtyard shows beautiful, almost 4 meters tall openings in the curtain walls. Nuragic people became experts in this architectonical structure and used it for everything they needed. In this picture, we can see the Nuraghi Santo Antine, which is one of the most spectacular nuraghi in Sardinia, which probably reached a height of 25 meters. In its courtyard, you can observe many truncated conical openings in the walls, testifying the advanced phase in the Nuraghi development. In this image, we can also recognize a well and a very long corridor that develops around the whole structure, linking the towers one another. In addition to the external corridor which connected the perimetric towers, there are also shorter corridors linking these towers with the principal central one, where the main functions took place. I think the Santo Antine is a Nuraghi dedicated to the sacred, religious sphere. In this image, we can see Nuraghi a Rubiu in Oroli, the largest of the Nuraghi. We can see the central tower, inside of which a vase with traces of white wine was found. That could be explained as a part of a foundation rite. This rite took place in the 13th century before Christ, and it is the second foundation rite of this Nuraghi, the first one being a rite in which a vase with oil was used in the 16th century before Christ. This Nuraghi presents 5 secondary towers arranged in a spiral manner, developing from the central tower. The structure has been conceptualized from the very beginning as a whole, with the initial project including every part of it without later additions. A deep connection with the religious sphere can be appreciated thanks to the different layout between the main tower and the curtain walls. The central tower displays very regular blocks staked in an elegant manner, while the external walls look a bit untidy, almost as if the blocks have been rashly and chaotically put one on the other. As we said before, however, the original plan included already every part of the structure. I believe that the contrast we observe highlights the distinction between the central tower, where the ritual occurred, and the lateral walls and towers, which were intentionally less elegant than the main tower for its beauty to be enhanced. In this image, we can see the Nuraghi Piscu in Suelli, in which the Nuragic architecture reached its peak. It presents a doorway divided into a very large interior ogival part and an external part with an architrave surmounted by a little window. This is a very inventive and skillful structural combination, since it allows more air and light in the tower. The Nuragic people gained an excellent ability in building the ogive, and they adapted its use according to their needs. The space between the architrave and the ogive presents blocks arranged as chevron, a feature which emulates the water flowing, and that began to appear in this period. It is a very important decorative pattern, and we will see it in the posterior Monte Prama statues and in some wells. This decoration displayed in the central tower could confirm its pivotal importance in comparison with the rest of the structure. We now move to this site in Villanova Tulo. The towers began to get more and more sizable, with large windows which allowed the light to enter in the chambers. The light entrance was regulated by the shape and size of the windows. Thus, the towers were also used as a type of clock by projecting the light beams entering through the window on the opposite surface of the chamber. Solstices and equinoxes could also have been measured using this method. For the Nuragic people, there were festivities, for example, seed sowing and harvesting festivals, whose celebration was of maximum importance, and so was the understanding and monitoring of the irregular recurrence. In this image, we can see the interior of the Nuraghi Santuantine, a perfect, considerably large pointed arched corridor. The huge stones weigh tens of tons, and still they are beautifully arranged in a spiral to make it possible to walk inside the structure. Some of these corridors can reach a length of 40 meters. In Santuantine, the corridors connect both the ground level towers and those on higher levels. The dome was created by placing one stone on the other, forming rows starting from a circular base and becoming narrower and narrower closer to the top. In some domes, the top stone could be removed to let light in, to observe the starry sky, or to connect the superimposed chambers in the same tower. Now we can see Santuantine from the outside, with its enormous central tower and the perimetric towers linked by bastions. The lateral walls of Santuantine are perfectly aligned to the rising and setting of the sun, to the equinoxes and the solstices. If, for example, on the 21st of June you would like to assist to a fascinating event, you should go at sunrise and see the sun rising from an observation point in one of the lateral walls. The Nuraghi were functional not only to the social and economical needs in the daily life of the Nuragic people, but they were also functional to the observation of the celestial bodies. In this image of Nuraghi Losa, we can see, from the top of its central tower, how the external higher tower incorporates a smaller one. You can also see the spiral staircase leading to the third floor. The three lateral towers develop on two levels, and all around the walls, new buildings began to appear, making the Nuraghi look like a citadel. And this is the characteristic feature in the last phase of the Nuraghi development, around 1200 years before Christ. We are now looking at the Nuraghi in Barumini, whose external part, as opposite as Nuraghi Rubiu, underwent refurbishment and transformation. The interior, the central tower, however, stayed the same. Enclosures, bastions, and little dry-walled huts started to appear around the central tower, attesting the importance of the Nuraghi for the community. The Nuraghi, in fact, became the center of attraction for the community, where people gather, share their ideas, technologies, and resources. It also became the place where resources were traded and collected. All this explains the need for a safe and functional space. In this last image, we can see the three-level central tower of the quadrolobate Nuraghi in Barumini, with its courtyard. Quadrolobate means that it presents outer walls with 4 secondary towers of 2 levels each. There is an additional external wall with other small towers for it to be even safer. However, one shouldn't think of it as a military place. Over the course of 700 years, the Nuraghi had different uses. including for very short periods to safeguard the community, but the Nuraghi by itself can't be defended. There needs to be a system of defense. The Nuraghi should be connected with other Nuraghi all around it to reinforce its defensive function. The individual Nuraghi was mostly a space for religion and economics. Whenever the center of an economy is, there you will find a sacred space too, since there will be a guardian or deity. Sacred, religious, and economical spheres are always related to one another, while war is separated. Where war is, there is no art, no developed economies. This might mean that where there is a flourishing art and economics, like those during the Nuragic period, there you will find peace. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it and I will see you in the next one. Have a good day.